doesn't care about you. That's why you need a medical emergency kit. It contains life-saving medications like ivermectin, Z-Pak, and antibiotics. Stock them before they block them.
Knowing how to invest your money is harder than ever before. Dealing with stock market volatility, record debt, and terrorist attacks requires new thinking. At U.S. Asset Management, we can help you see the world more clearly so that you can move beyond the chaos and invest with confidence. Call us, visit us online, or drop by our office. U.S. Asset Management, helping you make better decisions with your money.
Welcome back to armedforces.press. We're honored today to have with us former CEO of Blackwater and serial entrepreneur Erik Prince. Thanks, Erik, for taking the time. I know you're slammed, but appreciate you coming on.
Nice to see you.
So you went to the Naval Academy. I'm an Air Force grad, but I wanted to start with that. I mean, you left early. And there's been all these problems at the academies. Do you think, one, do they have a purpose? And if they do, how do we resolve the problems at the service academies, which are endemic to what they're teaching our, young officers?
Look, I think the service academies have gone adrift from what they were supposed to do. They're supposed to teach people to do naval combat, not diversity, not environmentalism, to teach people to destroy other countries' navies. And when you divert from that mindset, you really divert from the purpose of why the taxpayers are spending all that money to train naval officers. I guess my second perspective on that was having gone to the Naval Academy for a year and a half, and I left because I found the political correctness, the double standards, the nonsense to be untenable. And so I left. I went to a civilian school. I would say I learned more about leadership serving on the fire department in the local community than I did in a very artificial attempt at a learning lab that was a Naval Academy. The idea that the next class ahead of you is supposed to teach you, they don't know shit. Okay, for a junior in college to teach leadership to a sophomore or a freshman, come on. So, but then it was really clear to me when I went to PODS.
Mm-hmm.
Because I went through OCS. And so there was a mix of OCS, a couple of ROTC, and a few academy officers in the class, and how their style of leadership, their interaction, their ability to motivate, lead other SEAL candidates was exceedingly limited. And so I've had a pretty dim view of the academy from the beginning, and that really reinforced it.
So that begs the question: how do we train our officer corps? What's the best method we could do in the future? If you were God, what would you put in place?
I still think there's a place for direct commissioning programs, but I really I think there's a much bigger place. There should be a bigger place for Mustangs.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, for sure.
And NCOs. I mean, look, in my business career, I had really good experience with warrant officers. Mm-hmm. Because both the warrant officers that were running the training program at SEAL Team when I was there, or the guys that came and really helped me start Blackwater, and the guy that was the president that really grew the Blackwater. I might have been the idea guy behind Blackwater. Gary Jackson, a retired SEAL warrant officer, made the place run. And Jim Surowski, the director of training, Ken Vieira, the original general manager, all SEAL warrant officers, the embodiment of true subject matter expertise, commissioned with true leadership credibility that had been earned. So I have a bias towards Mustangs because of that.
I was reading about your career, and I followed your career, and that's why I wanted to have you on. But you were very proud of the record you had at Blackwater. Very low percentage of some armed conflict. Some guys were killed. But I could tell you were proud of the product you created, and the focus on taking care of your guys. Is that where it came from the NCOs you had in leadership?
Yeah, I was certainly part of that culture as well. I think I learned that from my dad, from running a manufacturing business. And, my dad started off with scratch with nothing. And so by day, he would be the president, CEO of the business, trying to make it happen when they started with 6 employees.
Sure.
And at night, he would go work a second shift and run a boring mill all night, making big steel parts. And 12 hours or half days. So try to lead from the front and take care of the people. I'd say that's one of my proudest things professionally, is that I still run into a lot of former employees or contractors around the world, and they say, "What are you doing next? Because we want to join you." And that period that I worked for Blackwater was some of the happiest times of my life. So that's satisfying.
Well, we'll get to what you're doing now later, but because I want to dig into that. But take a step back. I spent my summers up in Mackinac, Michigan. You're from that area, not from Mackinac, but the area. And you went to Hillsdale. How was that experience at Hillsdale? I've always been curious what that school's like.
Hillsdale was good. It was obviously a contrast from a school run by the federal government, the Naval Academy, to Hillsdale, which is one of 2 in the country that accepts no federal funding. So if I wanted to do ROTC while I was at Hillsdale, they say, yeah, that's fine. You can go do ROTC at the U of M, but there's no federal money spent here. They've never accepted it, and I don't think ever will.
Wow.
Because with it comes federal strings. So it was Hillsdale's a great campus, great culture. It's a smallish school. I think there's only 1,300 or 1,400 kids, but I made the most of it. I learned a lot from the fire department. I learned a lot. I dove for the county sheriff's department doing body recoveries. I never really did the Greek system, but I made it my goal to go back into OCS and go to PODS after I left the academy, and work towards that. I missed most of the fun times of college, and I still regret that.
A lot of us have regrets. So, I flew for JSOC MH-53s, and I think our paths may have crossed in the Balkans because we were flying out of Brindisi during the Yugoslav stuff into Italy. But my thought is we were training for the last 20 years in the last war. We were focused on, low intensity conflict, special operations, and we built the show. I mean, we built an incredible capability for the United States to prosecute those wars. But have we taken our eye off, large scale combat? What do you think?
Yes, and I fear that people default to what they know, and the whole SOCOM world knows the counterinsurgency fight and not major state-on-state conflict. And so the idea of being able to fly in a helicopter to an objective, patrol in, and shoot somebody in the face, and then get on the helicopter and leave, hard to do in a super mature air defense environment. And that's the kind of the whole term SEAL comes from sea, air, and land, and it's the whole idea about how do you get to your objective to where you're going to do your job. And so I'd say the hard part of special operations goes from being actions on the objective to actually just getting there, to the fight. And people need to remember that.
I think we need to be creative going forward, and I want to get to that too. But I have some family members in the U.S. Army who are on armored vehicles, and what is your opinion? I played on our previous show this morning the drone attacks in Kursk and all this stuff. It's just really intense, and I know you're up on this, but it's completely changed the entire face of warfare. Are these armored vehicles just sitting ducks? I mean, they're targets, right? Or do they have a place in the future? Because you need that shock value of cavalry, right? The shock and awe on the ground, like the old horse cavalry. But how do you take ground? How do you hold it in this environment?
It went from infantry alone combat 2,500 years ago to using chariots. And chariots were the attack helicopter or the armored vehicle of the battlefield then. And then elephants were involved. And then eventually the tank came out in World War I. And so there's always been a pendulum swinging back and forth between advantage to the infantry, right? The Panzerfaust or an RPG swings it back towards an infantryman, or you have great armor. Right now, the FPV drone and all the democratization and the cheapening of precision strike means that advantage is really back towards infantry and very small units, away from a big battle wagon. I would say give it a few years, and whether it's better armor, cages that protect against smaller FPV drones, lasers, EMP shock, lots of ways for battle wagons to improve their protection. And so it's always we're at one end of the seesaw right now.
So to switch gears, I know you're, you have a lot of contacts in Israel, as do I. But what is going on with this? And I know that the Witkoff was saying the Israeli special forces, and not Israeli, but Turkish special forces and drones were the ones that put HTS into Syria. In fact, I think you mentioned that. What's going on there? Are we going to have a conflict? Netanyahu said recently, Turkey. It's I think his words were it's almost inevitable or something like that, almost certain that we'll have a conflict with Turkey and Israel. Any thoughts on that?
Well, sure. I stand by that. Turkish Special Operations and Intelligence definitely stimulated HTS, which is just a rebranded ISIS Al-Qaeda-like affiliate.
Right.
And the leader, who was on the wanted list, got a good PR guy and trimmed up his beard. Trimmed up his beard, got a new
put a suit on.
Exactly. Says the right things. And so that's look, that Syria is basically subjugated to Turkey now. Don't think any different, really. And so the Erdogan's goal is to rebuild the Ottoman Empire, a caliphate, and he's on his way to doing it. If you'd watched any of his interviews over the last 10 years, he'll talk about including not just Syria, but northern Iraq, and even parts of Bulgaria.
Wow, the Bulgars. Yeah, he's talking now about taking Syrian land. I mean, that is Israel behind or who is behind the demonstrations against Erdogan in Turkey right now?
There is an actual opposition to Erdogan. And there's always been the rural areas are the most kind of hardline religious conservative zealotry, and the cities are kind of the most pro freedom. And so this mayor of Istanbul, I believe, that was arrested, is the most popular likely opposition candidate to Erdogan, and he's locking him down. So imagine that's a so-called NATO ally. Locking up his opposition.
Well, like Trump's,
like other political parties.
Yeah, no kidding. So Trump is making nice to Erdogan right now. What do you see behind that? I mean, he's gonna. I think there's gonna be conversation. And then Witkoff is saying, "Oh, there's great news coming out of Turkey." I mean, is it just the art of the deal, or what's going on?
I don't know if that's art of the deal or if that's Muslim Brotherhood influence and the money from Qatar that is continually manipulating reality. We'll see.
Interesting. So speaking of that area of the world, are you active in the Emirates these days? I mean, there's a lot happening there, right? No,
not really.
Okay. I've got some questions from the force here I wanted to bring to you, and I'll just read these. There's a huge over-reliance on cell phones in the Army. Should SecDef ban it? Soldiers are saying they are in about 15 group chats in turn with instant communications. Planning has become less extensive, creating an inherent weakness in our force. And we had an example of this of Waltz and on Signal. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that? I've been, it's the Fitbit bands that are transmitting information and all kind of stuff, devices that are giving away SIGINT. I think the Russians in Lviv used that to take on a NATO base, not NATO base, but logistics place a couple years ago.
Look, the modern cell phone has become it's surveillance capitalism. The reason Google and Apple are two of the most valuable companies in the world is because of surveillance capitalism and the idea that those phones have an advertising ID, which facilitate the export of your data of where you go, what you buy, who you call, what you browse. and it works with those apps to harvest it. Now, Signal is run by a foundation. It's supposed to be private and secure. I'm not as sure of that, but we did. That's why we did a phone starting just over 4 years ago, to be completely independent of that Google and Apple universe, so that you could communicate, but that at the OS level, our operating system on our hardware, it blocks all the tentacles of data harvest. In fact, we just did a test between our phone, the unplugged phone, an iPhone and a Android running Google mobile services, and used it normally with the same apps for a week. And the amount of trackers that were attached at the end on the Android was 100. On the iPhone, it was 57, and the unplugged phone, it was 0.
Wow.
So again, we're just trying to test our hypothesis, our promise. But yeah, that's why we did an unplugged phone. We're going through the process of open sourcing all the code, and it's made in Indonesia. It's not made in America yet, but we're moving towards making it in America. And because we believe in digital privacy, First Amendment, Fourth Amendment rights, and we didn't set out, and nor are we pursuing making a government phone. This is, I think, it's most important for citizens to communicate freely and privately, and that your data is your data and not anybody else's.
So I heard you on another podcast say that there's a switch on the phone to like disconnect the battery, and because a lot of every phone now, even if you turn it off, you're still tracked, right?
Right here on the side of an unplugged phone, there's a kill switch which physically separates the battery from the electronics, just like in the old phones you used to pull the battery.
Yeah,
that's what that does. So we can air gap the battery from the electronics, and so that off means off.
So tracking is a huge issue geographically, geo tracking with
with the ad IDs
from the GPS and also the the triangulation, all of that, and law enforcement is using it. Even you can go buy the data, you can't actually tell who it is, but you can the stuff they did in Georgia with the movie from I forget the
mules.
Yeah. So I mean, you can track people very accurately. What's the solution to that? Because if you turn off your phone, I know it doesn't do that, but if it's on, they can still track it, right?
An unplugged phone doesn't have an advertising ID. We literally don't have one.
Interesting. So therefore, they can't track you geographically as your phone moves around, or if they buy that data.
The ad ID, right?
So sorry, excuse my ignorance. I'm just trying to understand.
An advertising ID is like a 32-digit alphanumeric code,
right?
Which is assigned to your device,
and
as that code on the phone, and the phone is interacting with towers, it makes it very easy to track the unique breadcrumb trail of that device.
Yeah.
If you don't have one, can't do that.
Interesting. So next question, do you believe general officers, let me get rid of that. Sorry about that. Do you believe general officers get enough training knowledge on joint operations? That's a question from the field.
Joint operations, I think more than that, I think general officers need some actual business and cost accounting experience. Because they've completely lost the plot as to what things cost. And ultimately, warfare is still about what is affordable. You can fight all you want, but you have to be able to afford to fight. And so I would insist on some accounting and a bit more actual business interaction, and not defense contractor interaction, but normal logistics, manufacturing companies, A. B, in joint operations, yes. I remember my dad used to, at his old business, he incentivized, the bonuses were based on individual performance. Some was it on company's performance, but a third of their bonus was how they performed as a team. And so by holding that over their heads and rewarding people when they actually do cooperate, and that speaks to, they should probably change how fitness reports and evaluations are done, so that maybe it's more of a group write-up, that if you are in a joint environment, how well did you contribute to the overall effort versus the inflationary kudos that are included in the modern day fitness reports.
That would really change the input to the OPR or OER if you had other. Wow, that would be interesting.
But if you want, but here's the thing: people respond to incentives. There's really no incentive. Look, I in my limited time in the military, and I'm sorry to dish on the Air Force, I found Air
I worked for the Army, really. I mean, I wore an Air Force uniform, but go ahead.
I found the Air Force to behave like an armed Air Force union, like an armed airline union.
Yeah.
There was all kinds of reasons that they didn't want to do their job, instead of just saying, "Hell yeah, let's go. There's a plane. Just find a way to make it work." That was not my experience as an active duty guy, some time in the reserves, and then as a contractor interacting with the Air Force all the time. We got to where we specifically negotiated our contracts to not depend on the Air Force at all. We said, hell no, we'll organize all our own lift, everything. We want to be responsible for it. We don't want to depend on the Air Force because we just found them so difficult to work with. That's my experience as a contractor. I would imagine many active duty people have the same problem. I know the Navy, the SEAL teams have that problem with the Navy. If they need a submarine to put an SDV on or whatever, it's the territoriality of services is it must be broken down.
Oh, completely agree. You know, I had a general at the Air Force Academy tell me when I wanted to go fly helicopters, he's like, I didn't spend $500,000 for you to go fly a helicopter. I mean, the fighter pilot mafia is definitely a thing. And that's unfortunate because I actually saw that in soft aviation as well, because you had competition between the Army Rotary Wing and the AFSOC and all that. And that led to not the best solution for the troops on the ground.
So we are in the factory in Kentucky. This is ALP World HQ, and we are at the end of the packing line. So I'm going to show you how it works. We have the card, throw it in there. There's a packing slip, and then you have the ALP. And 4, but that seems honestly like a lot. 3 now, but it's good. You just pack a punch that, for a normal nicotine brand, it'd be like 8. We think 3 is fine. Next one. Again, 4. I'll throw 3 in just to keep it fair. Okay? There you go. So you can see you can get fast at this. And really, it's just a matter of repetition. This is kind of the assembly line that, Henry Ford devised so long ago.
Tucker's stealing all the ALP again.
Yeah, so I found I like having deployed thousands of people and aircraft to support them, that I find that making them bunk down in the same areas and making them interact all the time is very healthy. And those personal relationships, interactions, breaks down a bit of the tribalism.
So this question we've kind of gone over a little bit, but I don't know if you have anything else to say. What does the future infantryman look like with the invention of swarm hunter killer drones? This is from an Army guy.
Well, again, the RF signals, the amount of RF energy that the average U.S. military person puts off in the field now is frightening.
Yeah.
And so until they tighten that up, they're nothing but a near target or far target. So,
that goes back to the Vietnam days. I mean, it was very, the Viet Cong would just hang out around the airfields and listen to all the maintenance guys on their on their bricks talking to, we're launching the whole flight, that kind of stuff. I mean, this has been a problem in the U.S. military for decades.
Yep. And we assume what was the dominance or the asymmetry of power that the U.S. enjoyed previously will continue, and that's not the case. And they're going to be schooled that in the most brutal way, I'm afraid. So learn now and prevent that. So the infantry of the future is going to be a quieter, meaning emitting less RF energy. Probably going to be even focused on EOIR stealth, right? So you have to really go back to camouflage, speed, mobility, And you're either going to have extreme mobility and speed or significant layers of armor, battleship level armor to move around the battle space, because the democratization of precision strike means that anything that's located can be targeted. So to be found is to get killed.
Interesting. And there's another question. Would large-scale conflict result in EMPs and therefore back to man-to-man fighting, or will technology find a way to escape EMP threats? I mean, you just gave me an idea. If you're getting swarmed by drones, what if you had like a little mini EMP that can just destroy their electronics with a push of a button? I mean, is something like that on the horizon?
Not a terrible idea.
Yeah. Interesting. Next one. Do you see raids via Rangers Delta taking place in Mexico, Latin America anytime soon under the Trump administration?
I don't think so. I could see some drone use, probably some very small unit stuff. Call it, a Black Squadron, G Squadron, that kind of raid. I think the bigger presence that the U.S. gets, the more negative the reaction will be, because we've invaded Mexico twice.
Yeah,
1845 and Blackjack Pershing early in the 1900s. So a big soft push, a big obvious soft push would have a pretty negative counter reaction. But I think the Mexican people suffer under the hegemony that cartels have, and so finding a way to really severely degrade the control they have on society is a good thing for the Mexican people. But you can't let the cartels kill a bunch of Mexican people in the process.
I read that you proposed some kind of alternative idea for the deportations. Any feedback on that?
No, I would say it was not alternative. It was just a supplemental logistics, because I think the fact is that the Trump administration is not deporting any more really per month than the Biden administration was. And so we wrote up that paper. It was myself and Bill Matthews, who was the chief operating officer of Blackwater. That was done in September, I think, already last year, long before the election, hoping that Trump was going to win, but also knowing that they're campaigning on deportations. We need to deport because there's 15 or 20 million extras. So if you're going to do 10 million, what does it take logistically to do that? And so we just did the math backwards to say, you need this many flights per day, this kind of detention facilities. You need this kind of volume of lawyers to do some kind of an express due process hearing. And this is how you got to detain them in the first place and the intel to find them. So we just worked backwards from the math of flying people out, and probably 85% of the cost of that document of the offer is just in flight logistics. So I think the total number was like $26 billion. Yeah, because it's a staggering amount of flights. And so you think about all the people that came to America illegally, they paid criminal enterprises to smuggle them into the country to the tune of tens and tens of billions of dollars.
So what do you think is stopping the Trump administration from going to higher numbers? Is it lack of will? Is it lawfare? Is it money? Is it, what is it?
Look, the left will certainly try lawfare and to block any kind of effective deportation. They're running against the clock because you've got the midterms, and so what do you get accomplished before then? Look, I in the odyssey of this deportation discussion, I actually met with a senior DHS official who was in the room when Susan Rice said, "Of course, we're bringing in these tens of millions of illegals, and we're going to normalize them, get them the right to vote, and we will lock in political power for the Democrat Party." In the room in the White House when she said that. So don't listen to the Democrat bullshit. This is about power for them. That's all.
Of course. And if Trump is not deporting any more than Biden was, then that's going to be a reality in time, right? Yeah.
Novices argue tactics, professionals plan logistics. So we wrote it to say, if we're going to do this, do it.
Interesting. Next one. Will Hegseth remove women from combat arms or just level and increase standards? Thoughts?
I don't know. I look. He is right to say merit and lethality are the missions of the U.S. military, and I am all in favor of merit, merit, and merit, and don't change the standards. Don't tell me already in 1987 that the standards of the Naval Academy are the same when there's two different heights for the wall for the obstacle course. Like, come on, just stop the Orwellian nonsense. If there's one standard, there's one standard, but not two.
What do you see in forced restructuring? Like, what does the Army look like with the advancement of technology? Is it robots? Is it more drones? What is it?
I hope. In fact, I had a conversation with a Doge guy going to the Pentagon yesterday. There's 800,000 civilians employed by the DoD. I bet you can cut that number in half or deeper, and have a huge
they just
savings.
cut 60, right, or something like that, or
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
So the force should look leaner because the tooth to tail ratio is way out of whack. Okay, 12 tail to 1 tooth, no way. And it's probably even worse than that. When you throw in the DoD civilians, it's far worse. So it's going to be a leaner, probably lighter force that has less armor, but could be much faster moving. Look, the U.S. military is really based on a maneuver capability, but what you're seeing in Ukraine right now is not maneuver. It's a slog. It's a hammer. And so that's the last time I guess we did trench warfare in World War I for about a year, but the last time was really in the trenches like that was like Cold Harbor and Petersburg in the Civil War. But that the massive amount of precision fires to smash anything that's moving might make maneuver warfare difficult to accomplish against major nation states in the future.
Talk about Ukraine, Kursk. My thoughts are that was for trying to gain territory to possibly exchange in any future negotiation, try to pull troops out of Luhansk and Donetsk down south towards the Kursk region. But it had the effect of mobilizing Russian, man on the street. Because this was
Russian territory.
Napoleon came through. So it was a hell of a mistake. I mean, what are your thoughts on
that? Again, the Ukraine war should have been settled 2.5 years ago. And all they're doing is chewing through the next generation of Ukrainian men. And they're whacking themselves demographically. And a bad peace is better than whatever they think this war is.
Completely agree. No, we haven't helped the Ukrainian people at all. I mean, we depopulated their country. I mean, now they're talking about bringing in 10 million Africans. I mean, it's insane.
No, and the disgusting thing is the super wealthy elites that are hanging out in Dubai or London or whatever. The whole thing disgusts me. Okay, the people that fled Ukraine to not fight, if it's their country, stay and defend, and if not, shut up.
They're the ones protesting. I mean, you see them in New York and DC, and that's insane. Last question, and I appreciate your time. Let's talk Gaza. What's the future there? And I mean, the Israelis have been pounding them for a long time, and are continuing to now. But they still have, and they're degraded, but Hamas still has a pretty large force in the jurisdiction. Am I right?
Well, when you saw those hostage handovers, 2-3 a month ago, there was like a battalion-size element of Hamas in there with their hoods, with their weapons, a lot of captured Israeli weapons, doing the hoo-ha dance. So the fact that it's gone on this long is a major failure, I think, for the IDF. Why are you letting that level of terror attack to have it go to a negotiated settlement? is bad. And yes, the Biden administration slowed them down, but I'd say their own stubbornness also slowed them down. We gave them a very legitimate plan to drill and flood all the tunnels to take away all the advantage of subterranean warfare that Hamas has enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
It would have flushed all the hostages to the top, because again, Hamas does not want dead hostages. They're not as valuable. But they ignored it, and I think part of it is Israeli. Part of Israeli society just wants to flatten Gaza and make it uninhabitable, to punish all Palestinians for as long as possible. There is a lot of enmity between Palestinians and Israelis.
Sure.
Multi-generational.
Yeah.
And so ultimately, it's not our problem. It is not.
Wow.
It is not the problem of the United States of America. It's not our neighborhood. It's not our land. Israel is not the 51st state. They are a friend and ally, but it is not our problem.
Well, that's refreshing. I mean, I've been to Israel many times, have a lot of friends there, but again, I don't think it's, I don't want my boys over there,
No,
so.
and I don't even think we need to make the supplemental multi-billion-dollar a year extra appropriation to support the IDF. No, it's not our problem. Israel is not lacking for money. They have enormously wealthy diaspora. If it's that important to them, they'll chip in. But it is not the burden of the U.S. taxpayer, and certainly not the U.S. Requirement of any U.S. personnel fighting-wise. Zero.
Well, I lied because you brought up another question. Go ahead. Yeah.
I talked to one of the guys who was there contracting, one of the U.S. guys guarding checkpoints. Very frightening statistic. 45% of the IDF casualties were friendly fire. That to me was staggering. And I said, a further reminder of why I want nothing to do with that mission.
Well, you have, and I don't know if you're involved in this, but they're looking to hire mercs to go into Gaza to guard, a few hundred Americans.
I mean,
that's a suicide mission, in my opinion. Do you agree?
Idea.
Yeah.
Especially when the Israeli military, 45% of their casualties were self-induced.
Mm-hmm.
That's against Israelis. You think they'd give a shit about a foreigner?
Yeah.
No way.
So last question, I promise. Iran. Are we going to get drug into some kind of major conflict with Iran? I'm fairly tight with the MEK, the domestic Iranian resistance. I think it can be taken down from the inside. I mean, what do you think?
Yes, I agree. I think we should, what I've been recommending for the last 15 years was to replicate what the CIA and the Catholic Church did to the communists in Poland in the 1980s.
Mm-hmm.
You give the alternate centers of power, the Baluch, the Akwazi, the Kurds, the Azeris, okay? The ethnic Persians are like 45% of the population. And so there's a lot of other parts of Iran that don't want to be ruled effectively by the mullahs and by the IRGC, because the IRGC really behaves like the SS.
Yeah, it's an oligarchy. They're raping the people. Yeah,
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it was a real missed opportunity when the women life freedom protests were on, when you had millions of people, especially women, that just wanted to not have to cover their hair, and to risk being beaten for going to school and laughing out loud while in public. And that's, revolutions like that are 97% communication and message, and 3% kinetic. And if you had just taken away some of the inevitability of the besieged, the IRGC, the Quds Force, I think they would have crumbled. The geography of the country definitely reminds you that external invasion is not great, because all the mountains and everything on the periphery makes a external invasion difficult, but a firecracker from the inside is the way to go.
Yeah, they don't. The population doesn't love the regime. So, what are you doing in your day job? Where can people follow you? What's happening with Erik Prince these days?
I am we brought a new phone to market. So, to wake up 4 years ago and say, I want to take on not one, but two multi-trillion-dollar companies. So I'm spending quite a bit of time on that, and building some consultancy capability overseas to help countries solve some of their intractable, long-suffering problems.
Interesting. Erik, thank you for your time, man. I really appreciate it. And
if people want to check out a phone, they can go to unplug.com.
All right. We'll maybe bring you down the road back if you have some spare time. Thanks a lot,
Happy
my
to do
friend.
it. Thank you. Bye.